The twin moons of Ireller hung low in the sky, casting pale silver light over the glistening spires of the citadel. Inside the grand hall, the atmosphere was heavy with judgment. Rows of nobles watched in silence, their sapphire skin glinting beneath golden armor and embroidered robes. At the top of the marble steps, on a throne forged from stardust and obsidian, King Zoreth stared down at the figure kneeling before him. Arya did not look up. Her long white hair veiled her face as she knelt in her ceremonial blue gown, her hands clenched into trembling fists against the cold floor. She had known this day would come. Her tutors had warned her. Her softness was a flaw, her questions a disease. Vareller-bred warriors, not philosophers. Empathy, curiosity, hesitation. These are not traits befitting the heir to the throne. "You disappoint me," Zoreth's voice rang out, low and clear. "You were given every advantage. Tutors, weapons masters, knowledge encoded directly into your mind. And yet, when it came time to prove yourself, you turned your back on the trial." Arya flinched. She had not turned her back. She had refused. The final rite of succession demanded that she execute a prisoner of war, an elderly rebel already beaten, who had simply spoken words against the king. She couldn't do it, not because she was weak, but because she understood what it meant to wield power and what it meant to use it unjustly. "I spared a life, father. That is not cowardice. That is wisdom." The hall shifted with murmurs. Zoreth's expression did not change. He rose slowly, his deep blue robe swirling around him like a shadow. "Wisdom is knowing when mercy weakens the empire. You showed weakness, the kind that invites invasion, betrayal, collapse." He descended the steps, each footfall echoing with finality. "Therefore, by decree of your king and your blood, I strip you of title and inheritance. You will be given to a human, a soldier of earth. Let your failures serve them. Perhaps you may learn utility in servitude." There was a pause, a moment suspended in disbelief. The court erupted. Gasps, raised voices, and barely concealed outrage spilled to chamber. Giving a royal daughter to a human, even one aligned with Vareller's interests, was unprecedented, insulting. Arya looked up for the first time. Her eyes, pale and silver, were dry. No tears, only resolve. She said nothing as guards approached. She did not resist when they escorted her out of the hall, out of her future, out of everything she had been told she would one day become. The human arrived within the cycle. His name was Commander Jax Theron. He stood with casual ease at the base of Zoreth's throne, armored in chrome-fused alloy and jet-black carbon weave. The alien nobility regarded him like a trained animal, dangerous, perhaps useful, but not one of them. Zoreth remained seated this time, his tone clipped. "You know your role." Jax's eyes flicked to Arya, who stood quietly at the edge of the chamber. She wore no crown, no insignia, only a simple travel robe. Her posture was stiff, her gaze forward. "I'm not in the habit of collecting political discards," Jax said, "but I'll take her on one condition." Zoreth's brow arched. "You are in no place to make demands human." "I'm not asking. I'm stating." Jax's tone never wavered. "She comes with me. She's mine to train, command, or leave behind. No surveillance. No interference. You hand her over, you forget she existed." There was a moment of silence. Then a gesture from the king. "So be it." Arya followed Jax without protest as he turned and strode toward the exit. Not once did she look back. She felt the weight of eyes on her, felt the empire she had once studied and questioned now closed behind her like a sealed door. Their ship departed at twilight, cutting through the sky like a blade. The stars offered no welcome. The first weeks aboard Jax's command cruiser were silence and cold metal. Arya ate alone, spoke when spoken to, and spent her hours locked in the ship's observation deck, staring into space. Jax let her be. He'd seen this before. Soldiers broken not by war, but by expectation. She wasn't broken, though, just waiting. Eventually, he called her to the training bay. "You were handed over like a slave," he said as she stood barefoot before him. "I don't deal in slaves, but I also don't carry dead weight." "I'm not dead," she replied. "Then prove it." The next hour was a lesson in pain. Jax didn't go easy. He tested her reflexes, her stamina, her ability to follow orders. She failed most of them. She took every hit without complaint. She stood every time she was knocked down. She trained, daily, obsessively. Her limbs ached, her lungs burned, but something inside her had cracked open, a hunger. She studied the humans aboard, watched how they operated, learned how they fought not with tradition, but with improvisation and grit. Jax didn't praise her, but he kept training her. "You fight like someone with something to prove," he said one day. She wiped blood from her mouth. "I have nothing left to lose." "No," he said. "Now you're starting to figure out." He began showing her more than combat. Battle tactics, field medicine, engineering shortcuts, command structure, the things no royal tutor had ever bothered to teach her. He treated her like a soldier in the making, not a lost princess. And in time, the crew began to notice. The once awkward alien girl started speaking with authority, helping repair the ship's NAV grid, diffusing arguments in the mess hall with logic and calm. She still knelt in meditation at night, whispering old Viralaran verses. But she did not kneel for anyone else. Jax's second-in-command, a sharp-witted tech specialist named Kalea, asked him one night over ration drinks, "You think she's ready?" Jax shook his head. "No, but she's getting there." The mission came by accident, a distress call from a mining moon on the fringe. Pirates, possibly ex-military, had taken hostages. Small operation. No backup coming. Jax led the team in. Aria went with them. She didn't hesitate. She moved like someone who'd burned her past behind her. She used her agility, her alien reflexes, her growing command of human weapons. When a panicked hostage stumbled toward enemy fire, Aria threw herself between them and a blast, shielding them with her own body. Armor scorched, shoulder bleeding. She kept going. When the dust cleared, they had won. No hostages lost. No casualties. The crew cheered, slapped backs, shared adrenaline-fueled laughs. Aria stood at the edge of the landing pad, looking out into the stars. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a mistake. Jax came up beside her. "You did good." She nodded once, silent, then looked at him. "Thank you for not treating me like glass." He shrugged. "You were never glass, just a blade that hadn't been sharpened." Aria didn't sleep that night. She stood alone in the observation deck, watching the stars stretch and bend. She remembered the throne room, her father's voice, the shame, and she whispered a vow to the void. One day, she would return, not to beg, not to obey. She would return as something he could never command. The barracks on the Eidolon were cramped, utilitarian, and smelled perpetually of coolant and gun oil. Aria had grown used to them. Her bed, a slab of reinforced polymer with a single thermal blanket, had become a sanctuary. Not because it was comfortable, but because it reminded her she was no longer in a palace. She was earning her place inch by inch. Commander Jax, Theron wasn't a man of many words, but he was always watching. He watched how she picked up new techniques with quiet tenacity, how she refused to speak of her past, but absorbed every lesson like a sponge. He pushed her harder than any recruit in his unit. Every bruise she bore, she earned. Every compliment he withheld, she chased. Her mornings began before the ship's lights simulated dawn, 30 laps around the cargo bay, followed by sparring drills. Jax assigned her different partners, human, cyborg, augmented clones. She lost more often than she won, but every time she was knocked down, she stood a little faster. Kalea, the sharp-tongued tech officer with a streak of violet dyed through her undercut, became her unlikely confidant. While calibrating her weapons or repairing a fractured gauntlet, Kalea would talk, mostly to fill the silence. Aria listened. "You know," Kalea said one evening while tuning a plasma rifle, "I once ran from a battle, froze up, left 2 of my squad behind. Thought I'd be dishonorably discharged. Jax pulled me out of it, told me running wasn't weakness, just unfinished training." Aria glanced at her. "He said something similar to me. He's got a knack for finding strays," Kalea smirked, "then turning them into wolves." By the 3rd month, Aria was leading recon drills. Jax remained skeptical, but allowed her space to grow. During simulations, she analyzed data with cold precision, her royal education revealing itself in tactical analysis and spatial reasoning. The crew began to follow her suggestions, not because she demanded it, but because she earned it. Her transformation wasn't sudden. It was built in hours of sweat, missteps, and small victories. But something inside her had shifted. She no longer carried the burden of her father's voice. She carried her own. One mission changed everything. A rogue asteroid colony had gone dark. The Eidolon was ordered to investigate, with intel suggesting a hostile presence, an insurgent faction using abandoned tech to establish a covert base. The mission was classified as mid-risk. Jax brought a full team, Area included. They entered through the docking ring, descending into silence. The air was thin, recycled too many times. Flickering lights illuminated graffiti in multiple dialects, warning of betrayal, blood, and freedom. Area moved like she belonged there. Her pulse was steady, her breathing calm. Her suit, forged from scavenged Virularan mesh and human alloys, was uniquely hers, lighter, faster, adaptive. She had made it under Kalea's supervision, one of many things she was now capable of building. The insurgents struck from shadows, lean, scarred fighters using cloaking tech and guerrilla tactics. Two of Jax's men were pinned behind cargo crates, bleeding and trapped. Without waiting for orders, Area vaulted into crossfire, throwing an energy blade to disable the attacker's rifle before sliding in front of her teammates, deflecting shots with her modified shield gauntlet. Jax barked orders, falling into sync with her movements. The team responded as if she were second in command. When the last hostile dropped, Area was crouched over a wounded soldier, stabilizing his vitals with practiced hands. After extraction, silence reigned in the ship's debriefing room. Then Jax spoke. She didn't flinch, didn't ask, just acted. That's what I expect from a leader. Area didn't smile. She didn't need to. For the first time, his approval wasn't a goal. It was confirmation of something she already knew. But not all growth came without cost. In private, she grappled with her evolving identity. Her dreams were plagued with visions of the throne room, her father's cold eyes, the weight of rejection. Yet they were joined now by new images. Her own reflection in armor, a voice of command echoing in her mind. She was becoming something she hadn't imagined. Not a princess, not a servant, but something entirely new. One night, the ship intercepted a transmission from Virellar. It was heavily encoded, but fragments broke through. Area stood in the observation bay, listening in silence. Rebellion in Sector 6, palace walls breached. The king demands reinforcements. Jax entered quietly behind her. They're falling apart. She didn't turn. Good. You want revenge? No, she said. I want them to see what they threw away. The message confirmed what Jax had suspected. Virellar was cracking from within. Decades of suppression, isolationism, and tyranny had bred insurgency even the king couldn't suppress. The empire needed warriors. And now, Area was one. Still, Jax hesitated. You're not ready. I am. Her voice was quiet, but final. He watched her carefully. This isn't about proving yourself anymore. You've done that. Area met his gaze. Then let me prove something else. That I can change the fate of the world that cast me out. He studied her a moment longer, then nodded. Preparations began. Area's presence would be a symbol, not just a strategy. She was the exiled heir, forged in enemy space, returning with a strength her people had denied her. She knew what it meant. The risk, the politics, the blood that might follow. Kalea approached her before the launch. You sure about this? Going back? Area adjusted her gauntlet, her eyes scanning the system map. I'm not going back. I'm going forward. They just happen to be in the way. As the Eidolon powered toward Virellar space, tension spread among the crew. They weren't just traveling to an alien world. They were escorting someone who no longer belonged to either side. Jax joined her in the command deck, arms folded. They'll want to use you, parade you around like a lost weapon reclaimed. She looked at him. Then they'll learn I'm no longer theirs to wield. Virellar loomed ahead, still magnificent, still golden and cold. But as Arya watched it grow larger on the view screen, she no longer felt fear. She wasn't the girl who knelt. She wasn't the daughter who had failed. She was the warrior they had made by discarding her. And she was coming home. The Eidolon breached Vareller's outer orbit under a veil of shadow cloaking, avoiding defense satellites and automated scans. Arya stood at the helm, watching the golden sphere of her homeworld turn slowly, its spire still gleaming despite the fractures spiderwebbing across the surface. She felt no nostalgia, only resolve. Commander Jax kept to her left, his eyes sharp, jaw set. They'll detect us soon. Even cloaked, proximity's a risk. They won't fire on their own daughter, she said. You're sure of that? No, she admitted. But I'm not coming to beg. They bypassed the Imperial port and set down in the outer ruins of Sector 6, once a thriving city of scholars, now a battleground. Smoke plumed in the distance, and charred banners bearing the sigil of the crown lay in ash. Arya stepped onto the soil without ceremony, her armored boots crunching over broken glass and scorched metal. Rebels emerged first, young, weathered, and armed. They recognized her face immediately, and some raised weapons. But a single rebel commander stepped forward, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. We heard stories of a blue blood turned ghost. We didn't expect the ghost to come back in enemy armor. I'm not your enemy, she said, and I'm not theirs anymore either. The man studied her. Then why are you here? To finish what my father failed to prevent, she said. To end the war he forced on us. He held her gaze, then nodded once. Then follow me. Jax didn't flinch as rebels swarmed around them, eyes tracking every twitch. He had seen worse, but never been this deep in another world's rebellion. Arya moved like she belonged. She understood the streets, the dialect, even the underground routes the rebels had carved through the once regal marble. The Resistance's base was a cracked dome beneath the ruins of the High Temple, its altar now serving as a tactical command station. Inside, scattered lights glowed against broken statues of gods long forsaken. Arya laid out the palace schematics from memory, drawing attack lines with precision. They'll have reinforced the southern wall, but the ventilation towers remain vulnerable. If we strike there, disable the power grid, we can force a surrender. And if your father unleashes his elite guard, the rebel commander asked. He will, she replied, but they won't be expecting me. Plans took shape with urgent clarity. Jax assumed command over logistics, coordinating drop points and diversionary tactics. Kalea arrived shortly after with a mobile tech unit, retrofitting the rebels' outdated weaponry with enhanced targeting relays and dampener fields. It was war, but it was strategy first, calculated, ruthless, necessary. In a quiet moment before the assault, Jax found her in the chamber once reserved for meditation. You could have stayed away, he said. I couldn't. Her voice was calm, but laced with iron. He needs to see what I've become. Not for revenge. For truth. Jax nodded slowly. He'll still see a daughter, even when you stand in armor. Then let him. The infiltration began under cover of Vareller's twin moons. Arya led the assault team to the abandoned aqueducts, climbing through passages lined with royal inscriptions. Her hand brushed over a carving, her own likeness, chiseled in childhood, staring out in wide-eyed innocence. She turned away. The first breach sent tremors through the lower palace. Automated defenses flickered and failed. Rebels surged inward, disabling control rooms and locking down escape routes. Panic spread among the king's inner court. Their sanctuary turned to prison in a single hour. Arya moved with precision, striking only when necessary. Her presence unmoored the royal guards. Many hesitated, stunned at the sight of the lost princess walking through fire without bowing. One dropped his weapon entirely. I served your mother, he whispered. She's gone, Arya said, like the empire that killed her. At last, they reached the throne chamber. It was untouched, gleaming and golden, as though insulated from the rest of the world's decay. And there, seated with the same carved authority as before, was King Varek, her father. He had aged, not in body, but in bearing. The crown no longer sat as easily on his head. His eyes, once sharp with superiority, now flickered with calculation and disbelief. Area, he didn't rise. You return with weapons, with invaders, with, I return with truth, she said. Jack stood behind her, rifle lowered but ready. The rebel commander flanked her left, arms crossed, eyes burning. This doesn't have to end in blood, she said. Yield. Step down. Let Vareller breathe again. Her father's lips curled. You dare lecture me. You, who abandoned your heritage, who sided with the mongrels of the stars. I didn't abandon anything, she said, stepping closer. You cast me out, called me useless. Now I stand here, not because of you, but in spite of you. He rose, slow and deliberate. You will always be my daughter. That cannot be changed. No, she agreed, but what I stand for can. He summoned the elite guard with a flick of his wrist. The chamber doors hissed open, and armored figures poured in, tall, faceless, obedient. But before the order could be spoken, Jax threw down a command beacon, flooding the room with a disruption field. The guard staggered, systems glitching. Arya raised her voice. You trained them to obey. I trained myself to lead. The standoff reached its breaking point. Silence crackled with tension. Then, from the ranks of the elite, one soldier stepped forward and removed their helmet. It was Seraph, her childhood bodyguard, thought long dead. I serve the rightful protector of Vareller, Seraph said, eyes locked on her. And then he knelt. One by one, the others followed. King Varric's face drained of color. You would betray me? They would follow the one who chose to fight for people. Arya said, not for power, not for bloodlines. He looked at her, and for a moment, she saw something almost human in his eyes. Regret? Fear? Or just the shock of a man who realized his empire had been eroded not by war, but by his own arrogance. He stepped back, slumped into the throne, and said nothing. The palace was secured within hours. No executions followed. Arya forbade them. She knew too well what cycles of vengeance bred. Outside, the rebels began to chant her name, not as royalty, but as a symbol. Jax approached as the crowd gathered, his expression unreadable. You did it. We did. And now I build something better. He looked out over the broken city, a half smile at the edge of his lips. Think they're ready for a queen forged in war? They'll have to be. And as the sun rose over Vareller's horizon, washing the ruins in gold, Arya stood tall, not as the king's daughter, not as the exiled warrior, but as a bridge between what was and what could be. The reconstruction of Vareller did not begin with stone or steel. It began with silence, not the quiet of peace, but the cautious stillness of a people unsure whether to breathe or brace for the next blow. Arya walked to the palace halls that now served as command posts, her presence both comfort and challenge to those who once bowed out of obligation, not respect. She refused the throne. That ornate relic, seated at the heart of centuries of oppression, remained untouched. Instead, she convened with advisors in the former high chamber, a place gutted of its velvet and marble, repurposed with reinforced tables and holoscreens. Every decision was a balancing act. Too much change, and the loyalists panicked. Too little, and the rebels threatened to fracture. Jack stayed by her side through it all, an anchor against the tide of uncertainty. You should sleep, he said one night as she pored over supply manifests and tactical threat reports. I slept for years under his rule, she replied without looking up. I can rest when Vareller doesn't rely on fear function. He didn't argue. He never did when she wore that tone. Quiet steel under control. Resistance came, not from the people, but from the systems her father had embedded too deeply to unearth in one sweep. Supply chains once owned by the crown were now controlled by black market lords. Border patrols questioned her authority, unwilling to believe the king had fallen without war. And somewhere in the outer sectors, rumor stirred a loyalist fleet regathering under her cousin, Talvek, who'd vanished at the start of the Uprising. Arya took every threat seriously. She had learned to survive by expecting the blade in the dark. Kalea and her tech team restored the planetary grid within a month, connecting cities fractured by years of neglect. In the capital, New laws were drafted, banning bloodline-based privilege, ending conscription, and dismantling the royal surveillance programs. They didn't pass easily. Protesters from the old elite stormed the gates, crying treason. Area met them not with soldiers, but with dialogue, with transparency. It stunned them more than any weapon would have. Still, for every step forward, shadows waited. Talvek struck during the Festival of Moons, when the city was most vulnerable, celebrating its first free year. Cloaked warships descended to the eastern atmosphere, weapons locked on the outer ring districts. Panic erupted in the streets as sirens blared and citizens scrambled for shelter. Jax was already in armor when he burst into the command center. It's him. He's leading a hybrid fleet. Viralaran tech fused with black market dreadnoughts. We're outgunned. Area stood still, the maps flickering around her, battle reports streaming in. Can we hold? Jax hesitated. Not long. She stared at the flashing red zones, the parts of the city she had helped rebuild. Parts full of families, of hope. Then she looked at him. Evacuate the civilians. Tell the resistance to hold their ground, and get the Eidolon in the air. He studied her face. You're going to him, aren't you? He wants the crown. He'll come to it. Within an hour, the throne chamber was emptied, stripped of guards, banners, anything ceremonial. Area stood at its center, clad in her armor, not ceremonial gold, but matte black with burn scars from her earliest battles. She carried no crown, only a single encoded data spike clipped to her belt, the Royal Authority chip. The chamber doors exploded inward. Talvek entered, his armor gleaming ornate, made for parade more than war. He wore the colors of the old court, his face a mask of triumph. Behind him, soldiers fanned out, forming a semicircle. Niece, he said, voice oily, you've decorated the palace in rebel ash. Better than letting it rot from within. He smirked, stepping closer. You've always been clever, but soft. That was your father's mistake. He saw potential, but never trained it. I won't repeat that error. I'm not here to be trained or ruled. You're here to surrender. Give me the chip, kneel, and I may spare your people. She unclipped the chip and held it up. Talvek smiled. Then she crushed it in her gauntlet hand. The silence that followed was absolute. You were never going to use it, he hissed. No, she said, because I'm not building another empire. I'm building something better. He surged forward, weapon raised. She met him halfway. Their battle was brutal. Less a duel of finesse, more a storm of rage and purpose. Talvek fought like someone entitled to victory. Area fought like someone who had earned every breath. Sparks flew from each impact. Stone cracked, steel screamed. He drove her to the steps of the throne. She rolled, sprang, and drove her blade in to join his arm. He roared, staggering, but didn't fall. You fight like a soldier, he spat. I am one, she said, and drove her knee into his chest, knocking him flat. The doors burst open again. This time it was Jax and the rebel vanguard, weapons ready. Talvek's remaining guards fell quickly, their loyalty breaking the moment their commander faltered, pinned and bleeding. Talvek looked up at her. You'll never hold this world without force. She stared down at him. Then I'll hold it with something stronger. They took him alive. She insisted on it. The Loyalist fleet, leaderless and disoriented, withdrew under fire from the Eidolon and resistance units. Civilians returned to the streets slowly, as the alarms fell silent and the skies cleared. Varela had survived again, but now it was different. No throne stood at the capital center. In its place, a platform was raised, public, open, surrounded by glass and sunlight. Area addressed the planet from it, not as queen, not as ruler, but as architect. I was cast aside as worthless, she said, voice carried across every channel. Raised in a palace that taught silence, not strength. But the universe made me something else. It made me a fighter, not because I sought power, but because I had no other choice. And now I offer you the same power, the power to choose. The people listened, not because they had to, because they wanted to. Jax found her alone later, standing in the observatory above the city. You gave up the last claim you had to rule, he said. She nodded, I gave him what I never had, freedom. He studied her for a moment, then said, "So what now?" Ariel looked to the stars. "Now," she said, "we build a world worth defending." And in the silence that followed, there was no fear, only possibility.